Morning campers, coffee time. Yes, I'm all connected. I'm still trying to get used to this new camera. Let's talk about, before I talk about today's subject, I just want to show you this. As most of my regular viewers know, I suffer from English teeth, Austin Powers teeth, and this is coconut oil, peppermint oil, bentonite clay, hydrogen peroxide 3%, and bicarbonate of soda. And I just made this up yesterday. Wooden toothbrush, bamboo toothbrush. I did a video about making my own toothpaste last year, but it's just a reminder that not only should you not be using fluoride toothpaste, because you know what fluoride is, it's a neurotoxin used to pacify people, and that's why there's so much fluoride in the water, especially in Ireland and England and other places. Did you see the other day one of the things that has happened in the States, another piece of good news, as if there wasn't a lot actually, is that fluoride's being taken out the water in America. How is that a bad thing? It's like the food pyramid being flipped. How is that a bad thing? It's like the vaccine schedule being completely changed and cut and reduced. How is that a bad thing? I don't understand. I keep getting all these comments going, what's Trump ever done for us? Well, quite a lot actually. Anyway, today is about universal laws. I'll show you the video first. This amazing Irish woman, that's typical, disappears as soon as I look for it. Okay, so this video is from Debs Uncensored, Celtic Warrior on X under the handle Debs Uncensored. And I've never come across it before, but this is brilliant. Let me just pull it up.
Agencies are crumbling. What is the difference between a conspiracy theory and a fact? About a year. On our current timeline, about a year. I would have said about 4 years for some things. Some things are even longer, They take longer to surface and come out. But at the moment, my God, we're on like Energizer mode. Agencies are crumbling. Politicians are in hiding. The people are on their feet, roaring for their nations. The mind disease that is wokeism and the lies that we're told to perpetuate it are now as transparent as cling film to everyone. Retribution will come for all those responsible. It's universal karmic law. That means, right, there's no getting away from it. It'll find you one way or another.
Now,
What is the difference between
and I love this video because she's absolutely right. And there's a number of things about this that are... I can't, yeah, there we go. This was posted 17 hours ago. There you go. This is how I follow the guides, right? The guidelines. And what's really interesting for me, I don't know if you watched this video.
That I did. Oh, good.
If you haven't watched this video with Dara O'Flaherty on my YouTube channel, it's called Meet the Ferocious O'Flaherty in the Constitutional Republic. Dara's one of Ireland's heroes, in my opinion, who's been through hell in the last 5 years, and he's on his own spiritual journey. But he's done amazing stuff, and he's a great friend. And there's a lot of people in Ireland that put up with unbelievable resistance. And if you look at Debs Uncensored, Celtic Warriors, the comments underneath, what I find really funny about this is some of the comments. 1,000,000% right, great vid, thank you. You promise because I'm actually scared. Totally understandable, but the world is waking, is how she's replied to that. Can't happen soon enough, friend. We are with you in Ireland. Lots of love. But then you go down. Look at this. You are one of the biggest CUNTs in this country. It's unbelievable abuse, right? And then another one says, what the fuck are you banging on about, you dopey fucking mayor? But what I like about Debs is she's just gone, get. I was doing that yesterday. I had a comment on YouTube, and I found the energy rising in me to respond to somebody, and I started my comment reply with "Go fuck yourself" or something, and then I was like, "Hang on, Mark. Hang on. You just know this is my lesson, right? Spiritual. I'm not saying she's wrong replying like this, but let me just grab this. What I've learned is I saw a video. You might have seen it of a guy holding up an orange. And he stands there for a minute and he says, look, if you squeeze this orange, what comes out? And the audience goes, is it a trick question? No, it's orange juice. So orange juice comes out when you squeeze it. So humanity has been squeezed considerably. And if anger comes out of you, then that was in you. So, getting to the point, and I was talking to Dara about this, I was like, you've got to get to the point where it goes past you, because everything's there for you, right? On a spiritual level, everything is exactly as it's meant to be. I've said this multiple times, and that is the phrase that got me through my suicidal time. Me and Dara were talking about that, and I met another guy last week who came all the way to Ireland, spent a couple of days at the Healing Centre, and we had a chat. And the thing he was most interested in was, how did you get through the suicidal part of your life, which I've talked about on here multiple times. And it was like Groundhog Day, I'm in the shower again, I'm in the shower again, I'm in the shower again. And it was like a kind of hopelessness, but that's all demonic interference, and it's just a question of reframing your understanding of how it all works. Constantly having this conversation, it seems. But what was really interesting, what I want to stick to with this video, is this idea of, as she says in the video, the universal law of karmic retribution. Excuse me. Now, universal laws, I kind of picked and chose them during my life. And when I was working as a marketer, firstly, I was like, what am I doing in marketing? I hate marketing. I hate the manipulation of people, and I really do. And this is why I stood up once at a marketing seminar, I think in 2009, and there were like 300 people in the room, and I was being asked to speak because I'd created an online business and it had done really well, and I became an expert in Google Ads. I really was a world-class Google Ads expert, and because I forced myself to learn it. What I loved about Google Ads was that you could beat the big guys, because the big guys had big marketing teams and they were too slow to respond, and they didn't go into the depths, into the weeds that people like me were going into. So I managed to rank at the top of Google and get massive high conversion. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I stood up in front of this room of business people and I said, don't trust Google. And there was a gasp. And the crowd were like, what do you mean don't trust Google? Google's amazing. And I was like, no, you idiots are giving over all of your business data to this huge corporation. They know precisely how much you're spending to get a lead, how much that lead's worth to you. And I was like, what are you, insane? And there was one guy at the back of the room who was making $60,000 a day from his laptop, who came up to me afterwards and said, yeah, man, I agree with you. So it's always been a case of using the enemy's weapons against them, as far as I'm concerned, which is why I went back to YouTube again and again, because that's where the unawake live. They don't live on Rumble, they live on YouTube, even though Rumble's censored for some bizarre reason. But I'd tell a story about marketing, which is being used, right? What's being used by Donald Trump over the last 20 odd years in terms of his positioning in the world is marketing. It's the same principles. And I've said many times that the principles used in the 1928 book, might be 1929, by Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays, I think, was a cousin of Sigmund Freud. I think he's the great uncle of the man who set up Netflix. Anyway, he wrote a book called Propaganda. he was responsible for women smoking. He was responsible for people eating breakfast. You know, all these things that are, that's just the surface story, because those techniques in that book have been used against us. They've been, they've been incorporated into the whole MK Ultraing of the entire planet. As she points out in that video, the mind virus, the wokeism, the thing that makes people call her terrible names, call me terrible names, is simply because they're brainwashed and, in my opinion, demonically possessed. And, we've all been demonically possessed in our life, or controlled, because the voices in your head, there's two voices. There's the right and wrong. It's the devil and the angel in the cartoons. And learning to listen, and whenever I get spiritually attacked, I know that voice is not me. So I just tell it to off. I haven't got the book here, but if you are new to that concept, myself and Abby Wynn wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Protection, Practical Tools for Spiritual Warfare, which you can get at bit.ly/mass protection, capital M, capital P. It's also on Amazon, but if you go to that page I just said, there's a link below the video anyway. But the point I'm trying to get to is that I would use an analogy of universal law in terms of, like, you see, most people would go and say, buy my product. And the thing is, that doesn't work. And the analogy I would use is that it's like, what you should use is the law of reciprocity. And this is what I used to quote a lot. And people say, what's that? I say, well, if I buy you a drink in a bar, then you are compelled by universal law to buy me a drink back. Unless, of course, you're Scottish. That's just a joke, Scottish people, about Scottish tightness. It's kind of true, though, isn't it? I'm going to get shouted at now. And I'd use it. And the law of karma, everybody's familiar with it. But there are actually 12 universal laws. And I'm just going to read them out to you so that you can, if you're not aware of them, go and look them up and try to think about how that applies to what's going on in the world and what's going on in your life. But the laws are: the law of divine oneness, everything is connected. This is something most of my subscribers understand. The law of vibration, everything moves and vibrates. Tesla said, if you want to understand the world, think of it in terms of frequency, 369. And, I'm going to do some more videos on the frequency device I've got. A lot of those frequencies actually add up. If you 174, let me just think, that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 174, for example, comes to 3. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. A lot of them add up to 3, 6, and 9. Don't shout at me for that one, because I haven't prepared this. The law of correspondence, as above, so below. This is becoming very clear. The law of attraction, like attracts like through attract experiences. This is true. Birds of a feather flock together. The law of inspired action, taking action aligned with your goals. This is something I've been teaching people for years with the law of attraction, stuff that I understood at the time, which is constantly evolving, by the way. I'm not saying I'm a world-class expert in this, but I am. I did used to do lectures on the law of attraction. The big problem that most people had with things like The Secret and Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, I think that was 1936. That book was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie. I think it took 16 years to write. And Napoleon Hill presented it after 16 years because Carnegie gave him his Rolodex back in the day and told him to go and interview all his really successful friends. And he did, and he produced a book. And then I think Carnegie he said, well, we'll take that bit out, and we don't want to tell him everything, which is very similar to what the Romans did at the Council of Nicaea with the Bible. We'll just take those 700 books out so that we can control the output of information, because it's all about keeping us busy and ring fencing us. A ring fence is like a limited hangout. The Catholic Church is a limited hangout, right? Because people are spiritual by nature. We are spirits having a human experience, not the other way around. So because the bad guys understood this about us, they had to give us a ring fence spirituality, and then they created multiple ones so that they can have division, such as Islam and etc. So the law of inspired action doesn't relate to what I just said, but it goes back to the fact that the majority of people don't take action based upon their desires, right? So what I used to teach is that you have to believe it in your gut, and you have to fake it till you make it. And then you've got tons and tons of interference throughout your life. You know, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too ugly, you've got that going. Who do you think you are trying to do? You've got all of that bullshit which you've got to ignore, and then take inspired action by just ignoring them. You know, that's the whole point of that was missing, that was then repeated in The Secret, you know, which was launched massively on Oprah of the Blue Roof. Child trafficking Oprah. Maybe not. Maybe she's a good person. I don't. You know what I think. The next law is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Energy constantly transforms. I've been saying this for decades. You know, we're made of the same material that was here a million years ago, and you know, nothing ever dies. It just transmutes, which is why we shouldn't fear death. Even though I want to hang out and be Mark Atwood and see this awakening occur, and that's one of the main reasons I want to see justice for the children. That's what gets me up every morning, actually, and keeps me making these videos. The rest of what I do is like holding my hand out to you guys that might be new to some of this information, and just let you know, in my opinion, it's going to be okay. It's you know, a necessary process that we're going through as humanity, because we were so infiltrated, so controlled, so demonically possessed that, you know, and it's appearing the way it is. And I think she's, you know, Celtic Warrior is absolutely right. The law of karmic retribution. She also mentioned the fact that politicians are hiding out, and I just happened to look at a Redacted last night and see that Macron was hiding in a bunker because of all the farmers in Paris. This is wonderful news. And actually the video that Redacted did was hilarious, because it said Macron and his husband. Yes, very sick. Once people realise how sick these people really are, and it's coming out because it's all marketing. It has to be drip fed, you know. And there was another video I watched the other day of a guy, and I tried to find him to see if I could interview him. He's on TikTok. Can't remember his name, but he said, look, in marketing, if I can get you talking around the table at your family dinner, I've got you. And he said, look, that could be used for evil, right? And that's what's going on with Trump. Trump is a disruptor, and he's been talked about around every table, whether you love him or hate him. He's being talked about. That's what led me to get this book by Scott Adams, Win Bigly, right? Which is fascinating. And I went straight to a chapter in here on haircuts, because I'm thinking of getting a haircut. And he just pointed out how Trump's haircut and his orange skin tone was amazing marketing, and how it's been toned down and quietly disappeared. From 2015-16, that's all people were talking about. Orange man, crazy hair. Anyway, next one, law of cause and effect, karma. Actions have consequences. 100%. We've all suffered from, we all know karma. It's the most famous law in the whole list, so I don't need to explain it. The law of compensation, rewards for your actions. That is interesting, isn't it? Because you do get rewarded. I mean, if you are, I've often talk about just being kind to somebody on a daily basis, just to open a door for somebody. You know, this stuff is real. It adds up, and will have an effect not just on your day, but at some point in the future. And if you do good things for people and you think, oh, they haven't thanked me and stuff, then, you know, that's just your ego talking. What you need to do is remember that they don't forget. And it comes back in a good way, energetically, and the same as negatively. That, you know, what Celtic Warrior said is absolutely true. They are screwed. They're just screwed because they've done so much evil. And with the compensation thing, you know, as well as having bad effects for doing bad things, if you do good things, you will be looked after by God. It's as simple as that. In weird ways. You know this. I know most of you know this. Anyway, the law of relativity. Everything is relative. Challenges offer lessons. 100%. 100%. Every single person that's annoyed you or got in your way or whatever has taught you a lesson. And hopefully you've learned from that lesson. Because what happens in life is that you keep getting hit by the same thing. I described it years ago as God hitting me round the face with a giant fish until I've learned the lesson. It's the same in the last 5 years. I've talked about one of the biggest spiritual lessons for me is having boundaries, because I didn't have any. So I kept getting infiltrated and I kept giving people money. You wouldn't believe how much money I've given away to people. I've never mentioned it, but I've given so much money away to people that I've been trying to help throughout this spiritual battle, 90% of which have never offered me a penny back. And even when I've threatened to mention them on video, but that's like squeezing the orange. I'm not going to do that yet. I might do it one day if I get in trouble. But it's incredible how they're all lessons though. Money isn't real anyway, so who cares? And it's very important to not have that graspy thing about money, because it will bite you on the bum. The law of polarity. Opposites are two extremes of the same thing. That is interesting. Yeah. I mean, we learned in school that fascism and communism, came together at the top of the circle, and it's kind of true. You've got a Labour government allegedly. I don't think there is a real government, but in the UK, which is supposed to look after the people. But what's it doing? It's destroying the country. But people are still locked into that idea. They don't understand the law of polarity. The law of rhythm. Everything has a flow, a cycle. I've got a cycle, it's in there. Yeah. Got to pump up the tyres and use it when it gets a bit warmer. Yeah, rhythm. I mean, why have I written poems over my whole life? But why have I put out all these poems over the years? Because the funny thing is about the poems, actually I'm going to talk about this for a little. I've never talked about this. The rhymes, right? I used to be against the rhymes. When I was a poet, an active poet 35 years ago, there was a kind of anti-rhyme thing going on. And I had this thing about, I'm not going to read other poets because it will affect me. And it's a bit like, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like the art world. If you think about Van Gogh, right? My favourite artist. Beautiful. Nature. He was painting nature, and he found something magical in nature and then somehow encapsulated that. And then he died penniless and cut his own ear off and, was off his head on absinthe. Whereas go forward 100 years and you've got Damien Hirst cutting a dead sheep in half and putting it in formaldehyde and becoming a multi-millionaire. All of that art movement, apart from the art world being used for child trafficking and money laundering, it was also rewarding. And this is one of the problems we've had as a society, which is why God has had to intervene. We were so wrong. The things being pushed on us were so wrong. The same as the music frequency being changed in 1952 from, I think, 432 to 440 hertz. All of that is about creating disharmony. So the law of rhythm is something that you can't stop it. And I think that's one of the reasons why nothing can stop what is coming is a buzzword in the last 8-10 years. You can't stop it. You've got to get in tune with the rhythm of life. Even things like supermarkets selling us strawberries from Cambodia in the mid of winter is no good for you. You've got to be eating local, organic and seasonal products. That's true health. That's just common sense. So we've got the law of common sense isn't in here, but I think that's one that's coming. And then the last one is the law of gender. Polarity, masculine and feminine energies exist in everything. So do you think that that's why there's been this trans movement to try and push something that's against natural universal law in order to squeeze the orange, to get rid of all this stuff inside us so that until we get to the point of being in tune? All of it points to going inside. Something I try to do as often as I can. For me, meditation, I meditate when I cook. I love cooking. And if I I don't like being disturbed in the kitchen either. If you ever come to my house for dinner, don't offer to help, because that's my meditation time. And you might have yours, and that's good. There's a few other things here like gravitation, thermodynamics, motion, and stuff like that. But the scientific and the spiritual actually come together with the 12 laws of the universe. If you're not familiar with them, look them up and have a beautiful day. God bless you, and I'll see you soon.